wealth of life experience that he distilled down into not just information, but wisdom. And he shared that information in a lot of epistles that were written to different people. And he wrote one to a young protege of his, a guy named Timothy. In 2 Timothy 1:7, he wrote a verse that's probably known to many of you, that's in line with what I'm sharing with you, what I hope you take out of here. He said, we don't need to have a spirit of timidity or fear. And this is what I hope you understand. They're the enlightened people, the modern thinkers, the advanced minds would have us believe that our antiquated sort of cute notions need to be kept to ourselves. Nonsense. We don't need to have a spirit of timidity or fear. But he also didn't leave it there. What did he encourage Timothy to have instead? 3 things. He encouraged him to have a spirit of power, to be empowered by the truth, by the things he knew to be true, that whether people laughed, whether they imprisoned him, whether they beat him, whether they killed him, whatever that the truth still mattered. So don't have a spirit of fear and timidity, but a spirit of power. He also encouraged him, and this is one that I hope we all hear. A second thing, to have a spirit of love. So often, and sadly more often for truth than not, sometimes it's because it's easy to paint with a broad brush, but sometimes it's true, we're not always as loving as we could or should be when we're pointing out the fallacies in other people's ideology. And it's to our own detriment. We don't often do things in love. Again, in the invocation, this was brought to our attention, and appropriately so. We should be mindful of the way in which we touch other people, the way in which we interact with other people, the way in which we speak to other people. No one of us is perfect. No one of us will always do it perfectly. But we sure have good models. Some who have gone before us, not the least of whom is Jesus Christ, who taught us to treat other people the way we want to be treated. Not a bad way to live. But the way we do things, and if we in fact do it with love, it will make all the difference. It has the ability to absolutely transform the dialogue. I don't know what the conversation was. I probably should ask. I don't know that my mother would even remember. But I'm willing to bet that the woman who spoke to her at this health food store in Colorado probably spoke to her in love. Probably reached out to her in some loving way that made all the difference. There's a third thing that Paul asked for Timothy. To interact with power, with love, but with discipline. Let us not be scattered all over the place. Let's have a sense of purpose, a sense of earnestness, a sense of seriousness, a sense of focus. Again, each of us will take that to mean slightly different things, but the reality is the truth is the truth. And as it relates to the issue of the sanctity of human life, if we are powerful in our defense of the truth, and we do it in a loving way, and we are disciplined and not divided in the way in which we go about this, how extraordinary our collective ability to make change will be. It already is. This room is indicative of that. The power that's in here, the influence that's in here, the ability to move people at the ballot box to the point that you send people to Frankfurt and to Washington who will be more than 28 of 265 and more than the Northern Kentucky contingent of an entire state that believes so many of these things. We have an amazing ability, but we need to not be apologetic or fearful or timid, but to be powerful, loving, and disciplined. These are things that we have been asked. These are things we should take to heart. These are things that motivate me and inform me and my thought process. Again, I'm one person, and I will say this, it is an honor to be the governor of this state. It is. I don't do everything right. I'm never going to do everything right. That's not possible, and if you're holding out for that, you're never going to find it in me or anyone else. But the reality is I'm also not apologetic about the things that I know are worth fighting for. You can expect more of that, not less of it. And as it relates to so many of these bills that were alluded to, and there have been many, I'm not going to run through them all. I mean, they're ones you know. Informed consent and 20-week bans and ultrasound bills and on and on. They're all being challenged. But as was noted, they've not gone to the Supreme Court, and they will. So every time you read in the newspaper that somehow this group has lost, and that the pro-life movement has lost. I will tell you, for example, just in the last couple of days, big screaming headlines about how Planned Parenthood won and Kentucky lost, this administration lost, as it relates to transfer agreements, which have been a law in Kentucky and in many other states in Kentucky for 20 years. But now a judge has just discovered, I guess through an emanation perhaps of penumbra, I'm not sure which, that after 20 years this is somehow unconstitutional. And so that not only did we supposedly lose, if you read all of the headlines, but now we are supposed to pay $20,000 to Planned Parenthood. I can tell you two things. Number one, we haven't lost because it is going to be appealed to the Sixth Circuit. Number two, there's not a chance we're paying $20,000 of your dollars. Not a chance. Not a chance. So I will say this. Just because you've been defeated doesn't mean you've lost. You only lose when you quit. Don't forget that. You only lose when you actually stop trying. That's the reality. So are there setbacks? Of course. For an individual, for a political party, for an effort, for a campaign, for an issue like this that has this kind of eternal consequences, are there steps forward and steps back? Are there losses and setbacks? Seemingly, of course. But if we don't quit, if we don't fail to stay united, if we continue to persevere, we can seize the day. We can accomplish this. I often quote a fellow by the name of Thomas Edison, who you probably know. A guy who invented a lot of the things involved in this ability to project to you, the ability for movie theaters, light bulbs, certainly famously among them. He said most people in life miss opportunity. And Lord knows we have an incredible opportunity before us right now in America on this issue and others as well that matter to people like us and should matter to everybody. He said most people in life miss opportunity because it usually shows up in overalls and looks like hard work. And that's the truth. Think about it. It's true indeed. It is hard work. How many of you have spent more than 50 days on a sidewalk in front of an abortion center somewhere? Look how many hands are up. Think about that. These people, seriously. These are people who spend no less than a week of their lives every single week for a year at a minimum, and for some of these people it's been decades. This is what it takes, is perseverance. Stick-to-itiveness. People who don't quit because it's worth fighting for. Human life is worth fighting for. Judeo-Christian principles are worth fighting for. America is worth fighting for. I want to leave you with one final thought. Some of you are like, please, all right, enough already. But let me, in all seriousness, I mean, there's a bunch of things that I still would like to share with you, but out of respect for your time, I'll wrap this up. But I will give you another request. I want to share with you, first of all, a story. Some of you have heard this, I'm sure you have. I've shared it myself a couple times, and maybe you've heard it from me. But in the Middle East, there's two bodies of water. They're 65 miles apart. They're about the same distance as Louisville and Lexington, say. They're both fed by the exact same river. They're very different bodies of water. One has an abundance of life in it and around it. The other does not. One people fish in and cultivate their crops from. The other one 65 miles away, none of the above. What's the difference? They're both fed by the exact same river. The river is the Jordan River. The first body of water is called the Sea of Galilee. I'm guessing you've probably heard of it. The second you've also heard of. It's called the Dead Sea. What's the difference? They're literally both fed only by the Jordan River. And yet they're remarkably different one from the next. What is the difference? There's one primary difference, really, and the only true difference. The Sea of Galilee takes that water in and it sends it back out again. The Dead Sea only takes the water in. It doesn't give it back. It keeps everything it receives. My challenge to you is don't come to this event today and other events like this and take things in and agree, perhaps, I hope, and then take it out and don't give it back. Don't take it in and not give it back. Don't come in here only to be a receiver. I would challenge each and every one of you to go find a mother of three in a health food store somewhere or some equivalent thereof. to pour into people with power and love and discipline, to have a sense of conviction about the things that you believe that drew you here, to have a sense of boldness and a certainty that right is right and the truth is the truth. And from an eternal perspective, that matters so much more than what any one person might think about you in that moment in time, or what someone or society has told you you could or should or would say in such a normal circumstance. Be better than that. Be bolder than that. And if you're looking for a place to do that, this issue is one of them. But one of the biggest arguments that you hear from people, and it's a false canard, my family is living proof of it, so are many in this room, that we supposedly only care about a child when they're just about to be born, and after that we don't. You know for a fact, because of the way in which crisis pregnancy centers pour into these young mothers and their children after they're born, that that's not true. But one of the most powerful ways that we can show this to the world is by eliminating from our state the absolute black eye that we have, which is the thousands and thousands of children that do not have the kind of loving family that so many of us have the luxury of taking for granted. We have 9,500 children right now in our foster care system. These kids bounce around from home to home to home to home. They're looking for a stable family. And for those of you with 5, 10, 15 kids, you know that one more really only changes the vehicle you drive and not much else. It really does. Seriously. That's what I know to be true. And it's the truth. At a certain point, you're in the church family. You just give it up. That's what you're in. But beyond that, really, not a lot changes, but it will change forever the trajectory of a life. Of those 9,500 children, almost 2,500 of them, right now, in Kentucky, 2,500 kids are fully eligible to be adopted, want to be adopted, are ready to be adopted. Wait on average for those that even get through the process 3 years from the time they're ready to the time they're adopted, and for many, they never do. And we have kids that when they get to the age of 18 in the foster care system, they age out, and aging out means you get dumped out on your own with no family, no network, no anything. Shame on Kentucky, shame on America if we allow the 400,000 such kids in America in the foster care system to have this kind of a life expectancy for themselves when we could do so much more for them. What are we waiting for? Let us not just come in here, talk about how we respect life, value life, and Lord knows we wouldn't be here, but not do things about it. In this room alone, we could take care of some of those kids. My wife and I are not that special. We're not that incredible compared to most other people. We're two people like you who had a busy family and busy lives, and we chose to expand that and adopted 4 kids. Not everybody's going to do that, but here's what else people can do. You can come alongside a family at your church or your parish that actually is adopting someone. And you could say, hey, listen, I'll give you date night, every second Saturday night. I'll take your kids. I'll come over. I'll send my kids over to watch your kids, and you guys go and just have a day off. I'll bring some meals. I'll tell you what, every Wednesday night, we're going to make dinner and bring it to you. Tell you what, I know your kid's on the same team as my kid is, and you've got a handful of kids, including this foster child or this adopted child that's new to your family, and they're on the same baseball team as my kid. I'll just swing by your house and pick your kid up. Don't even worry about it. If you want to come and can come, great, but I will take care of your child. Every one of us can do something like that. This state should be a model. We shouldn't have the problems that we do for the number of children that we do. We have more than 6,000 houses of worship in this state. How in the blazes can we not find 1.5 good foster homes out of every church? How can we not find one home for an adoptive child out of every 2.5 churches? Really, 2.5 churches in houses of worship in this state? We can't find one family to adopt a child? We're better than this. United we stand, divided we fall. Thank you.
Thanks for being here and for such an inspirational talk to all of us. You know, this was not just a talk that reached us politically as a politician, but I think reaches the Christian souls here. And I think that's what we all need. God bless you, Governor. Thank you. I'm going to take a quick poll here, and I want everybody to vote. Do you think Kentucky has the bragging rights to the most pro-life governor? We are fortunate. We are blessed. We are blessed. And this has been our answers to our prayers. I don't think anybody's else prayers do pay off, but he's an answer to our prayer. And so is our representative here from Northern Kentucky. We're proud to have him. You know, there's an expression I remember hearing as a kid that you don't hear too much anymore, and I think it was one of the best compliments I think you can give to anybody. And I'd like to give this to the governor. He is a good family man. I'd like to take a second to express my thank you to Bernie Kunkel and also to Greg Gaspard, whose tireless efforts in making this year's celebration such a success. I don't really know how many people are here, but I was told there was 750 chairs. So you can add on to that. And I'd like to really thank these two gentlemen because they really were instrumental in having the governor come here and also getting our congressman to be here with us today. I do have a few more things I want to point out to you. We have our October newsletter here. There's plenty of copies in the back, and we'll be mailing those out